The Coaches Connect podcast. This podcast features the diverse perspective of a thriving global community of coaches, leaders, and experts sharing their captivating stories, journeys, expert advice, and more.
Hello, and welcome to Coaches Connect podcast. I'm your host, Nicole Jones. And today we have an amazing guest. I can't wait to speak with her, Pamela. She was dubbed the Ferrari of Coaches by her students and clients back in 2013. She went from teaching to coaching in 2007 and set up her own practice in 2009. Since 2011 until today, she has been training others to become professional coaches. She authored the first EMCC accredited course in Greece in 2013. While researching for her program, she went into neuroscience and microexpressions and presented on the latter at the EMCC conference in Athens. She has since then presented twice more at EMCC conferences on branding for coaches in Istanbul and using FBI questioning techniques to train coaches virtually. She collaborated for 4 years with the Entrepreneurial Initiative for the Dutch Embassy in Greece, coaching entrepreneurs on clarity of message, coaching, confidence, and branding. She has 2 research publications focused on using coaching and rehabilitation for people with phobias and traumas. Her research extends into the lies clients tell during a coaching session, a project that she presented in Boston at the Harvard Medical School Leadership Conference in 2018. Following this, she trained with former FBI agents on questioning techniques, making her the first globally to connect the skill sets commonly used by the FBI and coaches. She has traveled to amazing places to deliver corporate training and coaching, including Casablanca, Tunisia, Algeria, Italy, New York, Paris, and Amsterdam. In 2021, she set up a course on PR and branding, PR Brandifesto, a new course on neuropsychology for professionals, and shorter courses on negotiation skills and anti-fragility. Since 2019, she has been working on various projects with United Nations agencies, ranging from negotiation skills at the UNSS College to career and leadership coaching for the UNDP, UNV, and more recently, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. She had her company incorporated in the UK in 2016 and has established a clientele mostly in London, New York, and Amsterdam. Let's welcome Pamela.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, dear me, it's like listening to all this. It's like, oh, wow, I've done my fair share of work.
That's me, right? You're so excited.
And I I'm like, yeah, okay, it's a long list of things.
Yes, I am so intrigued by your bio. And I think many people listening will be super intrigued because, everyone has that story of how they got to where they are today. And I always like to kind of ask that coach the question, like, how did you get to where you are today? What changed for you to decide to switch from teaching coaching in 2007?
Well, thanks for having me, first of all. It's like, it's the best thing that has happened like recently, given the fact that I wanted to have a website where everything that you mentioned earlier was going to be somewhere all together. It's like, LinkedIn is fine, LinkedIn is great, but I needed my own website to say that this is what I've done, guys. So the story, I mentioned it on the website as well. I started off teaching children the English language, which was amazing. And I had been doing it for about 20 years. And then it was accidental. I went into companies, into businesses, and I started teaching business English to adults. And then one of the managers noticed that I could actually scan people really easily. And he put me to the test. And this is the real story. And I've only said it once before. It's like, he actually put me to the test and said, like, can you tell me about this person? Or can you tell me about this manager? And because he had known them for years, he knew if I was spot on or not. So he was quiet. Every time he put me to the test, he was very, very quiet. And he says, And then after 4 or 5 people that I had, he had asked me to scan, he actually says, like, you're very, very close to who they are and the way you have profiled them. And I was like, okay, I'm just a teacher of English. Like, he says, how do you do it? And I says, I don't know. I just, I
just do it.
I just do it. And he says, like, this is a rare skill that you have. And as it happened, it was a about then, it was in 2005 that I discovered an article in Harper's Bazaar for women. It's like a women's magazine. It was all about business, how women are in the corporate world. And it spoke about coaching. So this guy, in combination with the article and some of the advice from other managers that I used to teach English to, they says, like, don't remain just a teacher. Do something with the skill that you have. So I just figured that maybe coaching is the way to do something with that skill. As it were, it was.
Nice. I love that evolution of how, I think oftentimes we have these backgrounds in certain areas that we're like, I'm just going to be a teacher for the rest of my life. What other skill, and there's so much fruit in what we've done in our experiences that it's so transferable. But many times we sit back and say, well, I probably couldn't do that because, as you and I were talking before we came on here, my background's in music, right? And I went from music to corporate to coaching, back into corporate a little bit now with some projects, but you just never know how your story is going to reach others, right? And really kind of propel you forward. So that's very interesting in terms of how you were able to shift. And now you shifted, you got there, and you've done so many things. So many things.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead.
The background in teaching means that you never stop learning. So this is part of me. And it's like I used to tell my students, and it never stopped being part of me.
Yeah. And teaching is fabulous for coaching.
It is.
The fact that you're now teaching other coaches, how to become professional coaches. So how did you decide to shift from, I'm not saying you're not still coaching, but to really kind of just decide to teach others how to become coaches? How did you decide to go into that?
Oh, that's another interesting story. I'm full of stories.
That's okay. I'm here to listen.
I actually first became a teacher in coaching, and then I became a coach, pretty much because I had a mentor from Amsterdam. And he was like, he still is like my second father. So he took me under his wing. And when I first started out, I was like, I'm not confident to be a coach because I haven't had enough training, even though I was one that had had more than 2 years training in coaching. I did want to start, coaching in 2007. So I discovered coaching in 2005. I went into training in 2007. And I was like, I'm not confident enough. So I started like sort of coaching others. 2009, was not happy, went back to Australia, did a short course there, spoke with a lot of coaches, went to Amsterdam, did another shorter course. And his advice was like, what is your past? I'm a businesswoman. So what did you do? I used to teach. I had, private language school. So teaching is in your blood. Yeah. So you're not confident to coach yet, as you say? Yeah. So what's the next step? So he coached me into setting up a new business.
The business.
So the business was like, since you're confident in teaching and you're great in conveying messages and knowledge, start off with that. So very soon, as I was teaching, I became so confident. I understood which theory worked, which didn't work. As I was repeating it and I was explaining it, I was like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Oh, this makes sense. So I started becoming better and better with my own clients. So it was teaching that I started first. I set up the academy.
I think that's very interesting. And looking back on, how many of us got into coaching, that may not have been a bad way to go. Like in terms of, maybe you teach first, really make sure you get the tools down and then pop over to start coaching a bit more. I really like that. And I love the insight that your mentor gave you in terms of, well, let's do what does work for you.
Exactly.
Right. And you worked on that. You built a business around that. So in that time, as we are going to talk about pieces about how to brand yourself on today's call, how did you go about, you decided to do this business, and how did you go about really branding yourself and sharing, to others, like, this is what I'm doing and this is how I'm going to be moving forward? How did you go about doing that?
Well, interesting question, because the first branding thing that I had that students first said that I was is the same that my little ones used to say. Oh, Miss Pamela, you're very strict, but we learn English with you.
Sounds like you had some boundaries and some ground rules.
I did. So I think the same boundaries and ground rules came into adult training as well. So I says, if you want, to learn how to become a coach, you're going to learn the basics first and not go out and about, promoting yourselves as coaches if you haven't actually assessed your own selves and you're 100% sure that you will become great coaches. So it evolved from the name, the reputation that I had as a teacher. It's like I'm strict, but students learn the language, they can speak the language. It went into I'm strict with my adult students, but they learn everything. And when they go out there, they're confident enough to actually coach. So the first branding word was maleficent. It wasn't, it was like, I was very, very tough. It was tough love with my students, and it still is. It's not that I have changed in that, but this was the first branding image that I had. So when I spoke, when I explained, when I analyzed, and I could see potential in the students, I would expect them to behave as such and to deliver as much. So this was the first branding image that I had. And I knew that I had to do something with it because I wasn't the soft, trainer. I wasn't the soft instructor.
The kumbaya is what we call it over here, the kumbaya coach.
Exactly. Yeah. So I said, this is who I am. And this is how I'm going to brand myself. And because I want people to know what they can expect when they sign up for one of my courses, I'm going to put it out there. So I want my students to know what they're going to get. They're going to have some tough love. I'm going to have expectations. And this started off as part of my branding. So it was pretty much accidental because of my style of teaching and instructing and training. And because I could profile them, I could tell who would be, the spiritual person, the spiritual coach, who would be the business coach, who would be the corporate person. I could tell where they would be going with their coaching, aspirations. So I would help them define themselves. So in helping them define their own way of coaching, I would become better in defining my way of coaching and my way of training. So it all came together as a package. And this is what I always say, if you want to brand yourself, you have to be able to understand something that could be negative or positive, put it together and start creating your brand. Don't say that I'm not maleficent. I would never say that I'm not tough, okay? Because people could see through that.
Correct.
Because they could tell. If I open my mouth and I start training, the first thing is ground rules. Okay.
She's a little, she's not soft, right? They're gonna know. They're gonna know.
But then I smile, and then I explain things, and they know that I have the knowledge, I have the experience. So all these, they had to be part of my brand. I could not hide something that I am, and I don't want to sell something that I'm not. So that's the number one thing. Bring the negatives with the positives and put them together.
So essentially you're saying, brand yourself, brand who you are. Brand who you are, your personality.
Personality.
Yeah. And how has that, sorry, go ahead.
And if you don't know your personality, it's going to be very hard to brand yourself.
So how do you think coaches that are working with you feel when they start with that whole, like, their personality and trying to understanding, and then when they're finished, like, how do you feel most people when they come and start working with you, how do they feel about that?
Well, in the past, I would say they might feel a little bit intimidated, but also very curious. So curiosity was more intense than intimidated.
Yes.
So it's like, we are starting on a journey and we want this kick in the butt so we can, change our lives, but not in the sense of change the beautiful pink bubble and let's do something happy and positivity and stuff like, but literally change some things that we don't like. So they knew that in the coaching course, they would be receiving a lot of coaching to understand their personality. And every coaching session that we did during the course would bring out elements of their personality. And this is what helped them develop a certain voice by the end of the course. So it was the actual coaching sessions. And that's when the Ferrari of Coaches came into play.
That's what I was going to ask you. How did we get the Ferrari of Coaches?
It was actually, well, I have to thank that top top manager at that company years and years ago, when he was the one, him and my mom, they saw that I could actually scan and profile people. So I have to thank him, because I put that tool into use. And because I could, scan my students and listen to them, I could easily ask the questions that would bring out elements of the personality within a section or two. And they would go like, Pam, how did you do that? And very quickly get to the point of what they wanted to change or say or do or modify or learn even more about. So the speed at which I could do the coaching sessions, and the brain would go kaboom, 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 one question after the other, and the insight that they would have, that's how it came about. Ferrari, the speed.
The speed, right? Because I was like, is it the speed? Is it the look? Is it the but it's the speed. It's the speed
and the horsepower.
And the horsepower of how you get to the understanding of what they need.
Yeah.
And the work that you're doing, and you're doing a lot of profiling work and skill set work. What is one thing that you've really learned about yourself that you love?
Well, it's a new term that I came across. How anti-fragile I am.
Tell me more about that.
Well, this term I came across when I was in New York, and I love going into bookstores, and I love, losing myself in there, and because that's what I do. When I was in Edinburgh, you know how many hours I spent into the tiny little bookstores trying to discover those books that were interesting. And whenever I meet Scottish people, that I coach, and I was in Edinburgh and I got lost in those tiny little bookstores that you have. Oh, yes, that was common knowledge for them. It's like, so, but ever since I was young, I remember myself getting lost in bookstores. So I read the title and I decide whether it's good or not. And at some point, I saw this title, Antifragile. And this was a book that was written in 2012 by Nassim Taleb. And I bought the book, and it's like a big book. It's like all about maths and things. And it's like difficult terminology. But then when COVID struck, I went back to the book, and I started understanding how to thrive through chaos, how to use all the negativity, something that happens, all the adverse things, the situations, red circumstances that happen, how we can thrive. Not become resilient, but thrive out of this chaos, thrive, out of these red circumstances. So take them on board, use them as part of our, brain power and physical muscle, system, and become something different, something stronger, something anti-fragile. So I learned that I was anti-fragile all these years. It's something that mom and dad apparently gave me, but now I had the word to put on it. So I was not just resilient with everything that has happened in life, because I've experienced death, I've experienced loss, I've experienced having no money, like business went bankrupt and everything. So I've turned things around many a times. Anti-fragile is the word.
I love that. That's beautiful. In learning that is the word, or has always been the word, and you've been able to put the word to the thought or to the action. Has that shifted anything with you now that you've been able to give this a name?
Yeah, it made me 10 times more confident in developing confidence, understanding what a client needs, and helping other people, discover their personality, because I did it. I could stand my ground even, stronger, because I knew what was going on. So this shift was becoming even more anti-fragile. I knew that I could move away from, I'm just resilient. I am something more than that. And this gave me an even better perspective on my own branding.
It's interesting how we get caught up in the couple words of I'm just, right? And how you went from I'm not just resilient, right? There's so much more to that word. I think many of us live in the, I'm so resilient, I'm so resilient, I'm so resilient. But there's a lot more that kind of encompasses that word, right?
Yes.
And what you're talking about, I mean, that's an amazing, I've not read that book. I've actually heard of it. But that's an amazing read. And I've, as you were talking, I kind of made a little note of, that's probably a book I need to focus on coming up. I just think it's beautiful how you were able to recognize and name what you've always been, right? We have like a superpower. Maybe that's like your superpower, or maybe you have a different one that you'd like to share. But there is such beauty in being able to put the two things together and being like, that's it.
Yeah.
I got it. It's now grown me even further, propelled me even further. And now I'm just going to, be even more dynamic in what you're doing.
I actually, when I discovered it and became more dynamic, it's like when COVID started, I had undergone an operation. It was a very difficult operation. And I had to stay in bed and I had to stay away from people. So I stayed on my parents' farm for about 8 months, away from, just in case, something happened to me and I could not risk, contracting COVID or anything.
Right.
It was a brand new thing. So what I did is I took Antifragility and I set up a course for people that was suffering from the new era, the new COVID era. So right at the beginning, I think it was in May 2020 when it first started.
Mm-hmm.
And I set up a course called, Dealing with Red Circumstances. And I delivered it, to the Greek market for the Greeks who were suffering, because this is the people I felt closer to, because after New York and London, I came back for the operation, and I remained in Greece. I said, I'm going to do this for the Greek people. And I'm translating this course, like Dealing with Red Circumstances, in English. So it's going to be in less than a month, for public use, free for everyone to have on the website. And it taught people how to understand coaching themselves, how to understand personality, how to develop strategic priorities, and how to deal with red circumstances, as Bob Iger, the former CEO of Disney, used to call them, red circumstances. And I used Antifragility and lessons from Mowgli, on how to be able to deal with what was going on in the world. So Antifragility was the core training, of this free course that I had for everyone. So it's going to go global as well, because I really do believe that people should learn not just to be resilient. And it's the difference between resilience and antifragility.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so 8 months on the farm. Wow.
Yeah.
Just kind of in your, there's a lot of introspection that I believe many people have done during the early periods of COVID. And still, there's still areas of where people aren't able to go out and they're still at home, or they're scared, right? We're just dealing with so many different emotions around this. And so I can imagine your course has been quite helpful for people to try to just, spend some time with themselves, have that introspection of just trying to say, okay, who am I? Where am I? Where am I going? And oftentimes I feel like, I do believe many things happen for a reason. I don't say that I love when horrible things happen, but I do believe there are things that we always learn from every situation.
Indeed.
And this situation shut everyone down, where there was nowhere else to turn. You kind of had to look inward. You kind of had to do a little bit of work. And I do believe those that did some work are thriving. Are what you were saying. I feel like those that did the work, that started thinking about it and listening to, some of the things that you were saying, or going to your website or whatever, people start, like I said, putting names to things that they weren't sure about before. And I do believe all the introspection that people have had is really propelling so many more people forward now. It's not to say that people still don't have a little bit of that blah feeling of, are we ever going to get to a place where, I'm not really into the word normal, but get to a place where we can just feel like we can be a little bit more free. Right. And I just think that, the thought process is a big part of that, because I believe freeing our mind with what has happened is also going to help us continue to feel free as we move forward. I don't know what your thoughts are about that.
I'm very vocal about that. I'm very, very vocal. But you know why? Because I don't like the word normal. Going back to, what was
I don't like that either. Because I don't want to be where I was 2 years ago. I love where I am today.
I don't want either. And I'm like, do you really want to go back to where you were? Do you really want to go back to your comfort zones? Like so many books, so many courses. If you have a look at what the universities have done, what Coursera has done, what Udemy have done, what I'm doing, it's like so many organizations try to help people understand that new knowledge means new skill sets.
Yes.
And you have to move forward. So this is called evolution. So,
yes.
so
Yes.
you need to evolve if you want to do something with your life. You can't go back. And when I hear people saying, I just want to go back to where I was, I just smile. And I'm like, I'm not going to analyze this. I'm not going to go into this. You're going to go back. There is no going back, pretty much because simply you have received so much pressure, so much knowledge that your brain cells were affected, your psychology was affected.
Yes.
So if you're going to fight what you have received naturally under this pressure and chaos and try to go back, that is wasted energy, my friend.
A lot of fighting, internal fighting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because you have new knowledge. What are you going to do with that new knowledge? For me, it is a sin not to use new knowledge that you have already, gained. And people have paid, the previous years used to pay so much money on these courses to learn about resilience and inner strength. You got it for free from what has happened on this planet.
Yes. I love that. If you haven't had to go through anything before, now we've all gone through it together. It's the first time in a very long time where everyone was going through the same thing. Exactly. You couldn't call anyone from any country to be like, oh, how's it? They would say, oh, my, someone's been affected by COVID, or, everyone was going through the same trauma at the same time.
It's free knowledge, free experience. Yeah. Do something with it.
Yeah.
This is what I say.
Yay. I love the vocalness. See, I would be right in that class of like, yes, she's direct. I love it. I will be right there. I wanted to kind of ask a few more things because I was really struck by and totally believe in, the whole branding is yourself and being really who you are. I'm not one that likes to use the word authentic. That's not a word that I'm really drawn to. I feel like it's
as well.
I feel like it's so overused, and what does it mean, and all that kind of thing. But it's like, just being who you are, and those that will be attracted to you will come on your journey with you, right? Mm-hmm. And so, in knowing that you need to brand yourself, what are any other tips or thoughts that you have for people that are listening in terms of other ways to think about branding?
The cliche is to say to have an open mind. Mm-hmm. It's what I said before. It's like you get free knowledge, do something with it. So the first tip is like try to understand what free knowledge you have received and what are you going to do with it. Don't resist. So resistance is something that people have, in their DNA. It's like, this is who we are. It's like we resist change. We resist something different. So if you really, really want to change and brand yourself, you have to actually not resist what has come your way. And when we say authentic, I always ask people, it's like, don't try to be authentic, because authentic means you have to show your negative, side as well. So this is you being authentic. So when people say it's like, I have the imposter syndrome. So this is you being authentic with imposter syndrome.
Yeah. It's everything.
It's like, being authentic is everything. So it's all your negative things. Then say be your authentic self. Your authentic self is you with your fears. It's you with your lying. It's you with your truths. It's you with everything. So try to understand which part of this is good for business. What people don't understand is like, should I imitate or copy people? You know what I heard the other day? I'm sorry I'm going to mention this, but I saw the term while I was Googling something about branding, the Marie Forleonism. I don't know, because of Marie Forleo.
Yeah, I know her.
She's very well known, and she gives advice. And I saw somebody saying, like, I hate the Marie Forleonism. I don't know how they said it. So what does that mean? It's like, do not imitate, do not copy. She gives you advice. Even she tells you, do not do what I do. What works for me may not work for you.
Correct.
So when it comes to branding, try not to imitate other people. So my website, the new website, has a black background or a dark, brown, almost black background. It doesn't have white. It's not this like, the uplifting and positive thing. No, it has me in it. So try to understand that you should not be afraid of actually getting to the core of what you believe or what you stand for. So when I say being anti-fragile, it means when somebody tries to say, Pamela, I don't think this is right, or I don't think this is good for your branding. I would say, can you explain to me why it's not good? Because I have 10 reasons to tell you that A, B, C, D, not the marketing analysis, the scientific analysis of color psychology or branding psychology. I don't even go there. We don't need this if we do not understand who we are in our core, in the sense that we are not afraid to put it out there for business. The other example is when your mom says, don't post this photo, think about it twice. Maybe your mom sees you under a different light. Maybe your clients see you under a different light. Take it into consideration. You have to make the decision at the end of the day if this photo is good for you, your business, or not. So when you say brand yourself, what is your business going to be like? Who do you want to attract? When you do market research and they say try to find your audience, I say, are you going to try to find the audience that is going to be attracted to you, or are you going to try to build audience? People say find your audience. I say,
oh, that's a gem. That's a gem. One word makes it so different. Find or build. Because finding them, that's great. You found them. Now what are we doing?
Exactly. I say build. And you know why build? It goes one step further. Build means doing 10 times more hard work. Find means find means you try to take from others. Build, you create something that has to do with who you are and what you offer. That's a lot of hard work.
Oh, I love that, Pamela. I mean, build. Hey, everyone, build your audience. It's not just finding.
Yeah, find means, as I said, like, attracting, trying to get from the other well-known coaches, from the
let me find them. You're mining. So you're like, let me find, who could let's see. But, building is it's a very strong action word,
yes.
Right? I mean, find is an action as well, but you know what I mean? In terms of when I think of build, you just like, you're doing that foundation, you're building a structure, you're building a relationship, you're building, and it's just momentum that goes with the word build versus find.
But that's how you can stand your ground with everything you say. That's how I can be so vocal. That's how that's why I don't need to think twice about, what I say and what I put out there, because I have tested it. I have tested. It's not something that I have not tested, and I'm still testing all the time. And I want people to challenge themselves to test.
We could talk for hours on this. We're going to be closing up. A few things that are going to be going on. I know that you're going to be speaking on an upcoming webinar with Delenta in April.
Yeah.
So that's going to be awesome. People get another dose of Pamela. But before we close out, I wanted to ask you, what is something special or some advice that you would like to leave the audience with that's either been told to you or something that you just have found and you want to give to others?
I have added this on my website. It is a line that I heard in Robin Hood. I use lines from films very often.
Yeah.
In the previous website, it's like experience, good experience comes from bad judgment, it was something like that. So in the current website, I have rise and rise again until lambs become lions. And this was in the film Robin Hood with Russell Crowe. And I saw this, and people try to analyze it a lot. And I just say, inside us, we may feel like lambs. With coaching, with what is happening, red circumstances, with all the negative things that might be happening, there could be some great things as well. We may not be able to see them, but if we see ourselves as lambs, and if we understand that we have to rise again and again until we become lions, that's evolution. That's my job.
Sorry, they gave me all the tinglies. What a wonderful way to end our podcast. I have enjoyed my time with you. I'm sure others have. And I know that many people will be tuning in to listen to you again on this and also the upcoming webinar. Thank you so much for your time, and stay safe and be well.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be able to analyze this. It's like, I love it. And I believe in sharing, being a former teacher and a current teacher, forever teacher.
Yeah. Thank you
It's
so much.
amazing. Thank
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
I hope you enjoyed today's discussion. Make sure to follow us to catch more episodes of the Coaches Connect podcast.